We're here today to answer some questions that we've received in private emails and on our YouTube channel and from a few friends in person. So with that, how about the top questions that we've been asked?
Well, probably the most common question is, what kind of experience do you have with homesteading? And I would chop homesteading up into three categories: gardening, animals, and hunting and fishing. So you want to address that first?
Yeah, so my gardening experience started off when I was really young. My parents had about a half-acre garden in Maine, and from the time I was fairly young, I was expected to work in the garden. So I helped dig it up, I helped plant the rows, plant the seeds, do all those things. And in the summer in Maine, you get some really strong weed growth, so the weeding was definitely one big piece of that.
What about animals?
Yeah, when I was really little, probably 3 or 4 years old, my father and I used to go to the dump of all places and pick up chicks that were dumped by the egg farmers, because they expected all of their animals to come out at one time so that they could handle them all in the same fashion. And they took the eggs that hadn't hatched and put them in a barrel and took them to the dump, and we went and picked them up. So I had some very early experience with raising chickens, and then later on we raised ducks. We had geese, a number of other animals as well.
And hunting and fishing?
I love to fish. I used to fish an awful lot. I would do both freshwater fishing and saltwater fishing. And so I would go down to the shore and use my rod and reel and try to catch flounder, which I did sometimes. And I also like perch.
Did you hunt at all?
And I hunted a whole lot. As a kid, I'd go out with my father and would go sit on the power line or somewhere in the woods and go deer hunting. I also went after grouse and partridge. It was great fun, and I really enjoyed doing it.
I cannot remember a time when I wasn't gardening, actually. My mom was more into ornamentals than she was into vegetables, but I do remember a small tomato garden with peppers and things like that when I was a kid. And my grandma always had a big garden. She had tons and tons of tomatoes and stuff, and I get the impression that she was actually canning. I know that she was doing some berries and stuff too, so there was some of that. My mom did not do any canning or freezing or anything like that. In fact, I remember quite a to-do one time when my dad and I went out and picked like multiple gallons of blackberries and came home, and he thought she'd be excited. She was not, because he expected her to make jam. I would have been excited because I would have made a lot of jam and it would have been yummy, but that wasn't her thing. Animals, my mom did not like animals. She thought they were dirty and obnoxious and things like that. So I used to go play with my neighbor's pets. And I used to help the lady next door walk her dog and stuff like that. So I always liked animals, but I didn't have any personal experience when I was young. When we were first married and things like that, we had friends who had animals, and then we did have ducks at one point and a goat. But then we moved to suburbia where that was totally not an acceptable thing. We really didn't have any animals after that until the kids were younger, and then we got a dog.
Right.
But we always lived in suburbia where that was just not on the list of things you could do. And we both worked, so it made more of a challenge. But that was always a garden. We left a trail. We always say that we moved a lot because of jobs over the years. We left a trail of gardens across the United States everywhere we went. So there was a lot of that. Hunting and fishing. My dad did not hunt, but he loved fish. And I did mostly saltwater fishing. I have very little freshwater experience, but yeah, I used to fish a lot, and I remember learning to clean fish when I was probably 4 or 5, because the rule was if you caught it, you cleaned it.
Yeah, that was the same rule in my house. If you caught it, you cleaned it, no matter what it was.
And it really wasn't that big a deal. The only thing I really didn't care for was scaling, because that's just such a messy job, especially if you didn't have enough water. If you had plenty of water, it wasn't a problem. But yeah, fishing and hunting, definitely. And then we hunted a lot when we were first married. Mostly small stuff like rabbits, and quail and things like that,
Right.
but that was still mighty tasty. Okay, question number 2. Why don't we raise animals?
Oh, no, that's a good question. Yeah, I loved when we had ducks. I really liked Marlena, the goat that we had. But for the past, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years, something like that, we've operated a business, well, mostly you've operated a business that required travel. And until this last year, I think that we spent 120 or 130 days on the road every single year, which is an awful lot of time. So if you look at a calendar, there's no time during the year when you'd be able to actually start raising a chicken and process a chicken before you had to be on the road again. And you sure couldn't raise goats or cows or anything like that. And really the problem is we didn't have anybody who was reliable. We still don't really have anybody reliable.
No, even though we live in an extremely rural area, a significant percentage of the people who live here are retirees.
Right.
And you're lucky if they garden.
Right.
You know, I kind of wonder what some of them do. Watch TV? I don't know. But, you know, it's a lovely area, but they don't do the rural things. We're still trying to find somebody reliable enough that we could have anything. We are working on a plot. We've been looking, we've dropped a couple of the events that we do, and we're trying to see if we can set up to eventually be able to do meat chickens.
Yeah, we think we might actually be able to do meat chickens because they have a short enough growing period. If you can hatch them and harvest them within 8 weeks or 9 weeks, there's a real chance that we might actually be able to do that.
Right, so we're working on that, but we want to make sure that we've got everything. We're a predator-rich environment. We have owls, and we have hawks, and we have bald eagles, and we have golden eagles, and we have coyotes and bobcats and all kinds of wonderful things. So, not to mention the neighborhood dogs.
Right.
So, we have to make sure that we have our infrastructure in place and very solid before we do it. We have some friends in the area who have raised chickens before, so we'll probably pop in on them and see how they were able to make things work. But we think we probably, in the future, will do some meat chickens. But anything else, there's just no way. I'd love to have some regular hens and stuff like that for laying, but... And some of our neighbors do. Well, you can hear, there's a couple of people who do. You can hear the roosters occasionally.
They're a long way away, though.
Yeah, well, you can hear a long distance here because it's so quiet. So one of the questions that I've gotten personally from several people is, when am I going to get a landline? And my usual answer is, well, it could happen in 10 or 20 years. And they're totally confused by this. Without electricity in a line, you can't have a landline, a regular phone like you grew up with when you were a kid. Everybody in this area simply has cell phones with unlimited plans. Right. So I tell my friends, hey, if you want to call me, and we've got a zillion minutes. That's why we set it up that way, because the chance that we'll ever get a landline out here is really slim. I've heard all kinds of rumors as to the Arizona electrical people not wanting to put stuff out here and this and that and the other thing. The basic problem is our area does not have a concentrated enough population, and even if you did put the lines in, then you'd have to try to collect money from people. And there's a lot of people out here who are very financially borderline. So they want to they'll spend their money on putting infrastructure in where you've got 20 houses and an acre. They don't want to have to fuss with the smallest piece of property you could have in the area we live in is 10 acres.
Right, 10 acres, and our place is 43 acres.
Right.
And we're not all that unusual.
No, I would say 40 is a common number here. A lot of people have 40, and some of the older people here who've been here for longer acquired more than one 40-acre parcel. So you have people who have 120, 400 acres, that sort of thing. But yeah, the smallest piece of property you could have is 10 acres, so that's too far in between lots as far as the power people are concerned. So here's a question for you. How many kids do we have?
We have 2 adult children. By adult, our youngest is 37. Right, our youngest is 37 years old. They're both fully employed. They live out of the state of Arizona. I'm very, very proud of them. We see them sometimes, but we don't have any kids at home.
What was your first job after we got married?
Why don't you go with that one first?
Let's see, first job after we got married. That would be New Mexico. So my first job was working on a survey crew. We were surveying. I had a little experience as surveying because I worked in the field for an archaeology field school, and they were looking for crew members for a survey team. It was a job, and I don't even remember how much it paid. I just remember it took forever to get paid, which was very annoying because we needed the money. But yeah, we went out in the middle of the sticks and we surveyed mining claims. Somebody had chopped up, each state has their own thing in terms of mining claims, and in New Mexico there's a big deal about selling mining claims. You have companies that specialize in it and all that sort of thing. And yeah, we spent hours and hours and hours out there doing what they call running chain, which is old style. I mean, that was none of this GPS fancy stuff. That was sticks and tapes and, you know.
How many years ago was that?
Mumble. That was a lot of years ago. That was
43?
1974. Yeah. A long time ago.
So it'll be 45 years. Coming up pretty quick.
Yep. So what was your first job after we got married?
Well, my first job was really pretty interesting. I was a field supervisor for a conventional weapons testing facility. Now, what that means is I worked around explosives, things that blew up. And the nice thing about that, well, it's maybe not nice, but it was kind of a bit of a comfort for Irene, because when things were going to be set off on the project, it was pretty much on a regular schedule. So when something went boom, she knew it was supposed to be going boom and things were okay. That was interesting, but kind of the most fun part of that job was operating heavy equipment. I operated every kind of heavy equipment you could think of, from a bulldozer to large front-end loaders to cranes. I operated a number of track vehicles. And the most fun part of that actually was teaching other students how to drive. And I remember one small girl. She might have been maybe 5 feet tall, and her feet wouldn't reach the pedals. It was a 1950 or 51 ammunition carrier, and it had a really low gearing, which meant that if you got in the truck and you started it in that gear, you couldn't stall it. It would just keep on going no matter what you did. Well, at least on a flat ground. Her legs were so short that I wired wooden blocks to the pedals so that she could actually reach them, because part of the requirement on that job was that you had to be able to drive. So I taught a number of students how to drive manual transmission in that old 1951 or 52 truck.
Yeah, I don't think you drove any cars that were, or vehicles that were younger than you were.
Yeah, no, most of them were already older than me at the time I started driving them.
Yeah. Born well before you were.
Absolutely.
Oh, and the last question for today is, what hobby do we both enjoy doing together?
Yeah. Irene and I belong to a historical recreation group. And I think I have some video that I'll be able to put into this video to show you a little bit about what goes on. But I like to brew, I like to do other things like that, and so one of the things I did, and I do, is I do brewing in old techniques, 500 or 600 years ago.
Right, and I tend to do, well, I run a business that caters to historic reenactors, everything from Greece and Rome down to 1600. And I actually wholesale to friends who run businesses that deal with colonial, Civil War, Victorian, Edwardian, that sort of thing. But yeah, lots of crafty bits. I came from a crafty family. My mom was always knitting or sewing or something like that, so it was just a natural extension for me, and just added more ancient techniques in addition to the knitting and things like that. So
yes, really interesting working with Irene in her business, because she knows all these things really cold. I know my specialties very well, but people will come into her shop and ask to specifically speak to her because they know she knows the authentic facts. So they come looking for her.
My job. And if I don't mind saying, gee, I don't know, I'll look it up for you.
Well, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe our channel if you haven't already. And we'll see you on the next one of these.
Right, and I've started posting. I try and do it every day, at least once, on Instagram. So, and we're just BrainStorm Acres on Instagram. So I try and show something silly like the cat climbing a ladder when she shouldn't, or something like that, every day. Or killing weeds. I killed a couple of weeds today, so, you know, we're in between winter storms, so we're trying to get things done.
All right, thank you very much.
See you next time.